That's very grand, and I appreciate it. I'm not sure who arranged that music and the wonderful introduction, but thank you very much. Now, I have an icebreaker idea for you. I would like you to watch this presentation and try not to smile at any stage. Most of you just failed. It's actually very hard to not smile when somebody tells you not to smile. This is the presentation you're looking for. We are going to talk with you about a comparison across a number of different research methods. And the reason we're going to do that is because, of course, our world has changed. If you have a look at a couple of these pictures, this is a classic from decades ago way that we used to shop. And of course, we know this because some of us shopped like this, some of us had parents and grandparents who shopped like this. And this is a picture of the very first SMR Congress. I think that we've dropped the formality a little since then. A very serious bunch. And of course, we're all serious too. We take these things seriously, which is why we're spending time comparing methods. So our world has changed significantly because what I'll show you next is an example of how we're shopping today and also the last SMR Congress. So you see, we've all moved on. We put these funny red noses on. I'm in there somewhere, and a few others. A couple of famous people, Nicole Kidman in the middle. But more importantly, this is how we're doing a lot of shopping. So this is where people are spending their time. We're having fun in the research industry, but what we're ultimately trying to do, and we heard this yesterday, is we're trying to help drive value into our businesses. And so we need to research, we need to understand people, get closer to them where they are. And increasingly, it's people that are walking around with these wonderful digital devices and sharing information and shopping and so on. We all know that, that's why we're here. One of the other pieces of information I want to share with you is what we call the Survey Hangover. So you see Yoda here. He was in the bar last night with a few of the other people that have not yet made it. And he spent a bit too much time doing surveys. And what we find is that if somebody's done a face-to-face survey, typically it takes about 15 days, and we've done experiments here, it takes about 15 days before they're willing or prepared to take another survey. One of the hypotheses around that is they invest quite a lot of time in that. Maybe it's a 45-minute survey. In fact, this is a direct comparison across 25-minute surveys. But we find that the experience of somebody doing a face-to-face means that they're unlikely to respond, on average, for 15 days to do another survey. Now, of course, there's questions about over-researching people and so on, but we wanted to really push this, so we were asking people the next day whether they would do another survey. And we found on average, face-to-face, takes about 15 days for somebody to respond, whereas online, people are prepared to do another survey about 5 days later, and mobile, about 3 days. So you see that the amount of time that you invest as an individual into that survey and the relationship that you have with market research means that, in general, the face-to-face, it puts people off a little bit. So, of course, mobile, it's more relevant, and people are more prepared to make a greater and more frequent commitment into the market research process. Which I find a pretty interesting finding, just off the bat. We're going to go a little bit more into detail now on the comparison of the findings that we discovered when we looked at essentially the same methodology, the same series of questions across 3 different methodologies. So we're going to share some findings from mobile, face-to-face, and online. And we will have Princess Leah Gupta, share that for you.
Thank you, Dan. So, from Darth Vader to Princess Leia, what we did here was essentially our approach was that we had an hypothesis that does survey methodology impact the accuracy of claim behavior, the type of target audience reached, and the response patterns? The response patterns could be in terms of time of day or the location from where they were responding from. We had done a bit of a background research. Last year, a leading beverage company presented a paper where they compared the offline and online methodology, where they found that different truths do emerge from these two methodologies, but these truths do not impact the business decision as such. Borderless Access, we had presented a paper at the MRMW last year, where we tried to understand whether customers deliberately lie, and we were able to establish that people do lie deliberately as well as involuntarily, and marketers need to keep both types of lying in consideration when taking decisions. So a quick look at the study that we conducted. We did it in India, in Bangalore city, and Indonesia, in Jakarta. And 3 methodologies, male, female, 18 plus years of age. And what we did was, against all 3 methodologies, we had a sub-segment of respondents who had a passive meter downloaded on their mobile phone so that we could capture their actual behavior and use that to analyze some of the information that we found from our research instrument. So essentially, we analyzed the data, the primary data as well as the secondary data. The secondary data was actually the behavior data, one from the meter that was downloaded on the smartphones, and 2, we also have our own in-house panel management tool called SmartSight, and we use that data to see the response patterns of some of the customers over the past few months and to explain some of the results. It was a typical 10-minute research instrument, basically capturing demographics, online and mobile purchase behavior on certain categories, app usage, and mobile behavior. So our findings. Surprisingly, one of the key difference in the findings was that the productive field time across all 3 methodologies was very different. In India, face-to-face was largely in the daytime, 12 to 5 p.m., while mobile was skewed towards the evening, and the mobile surveys were spaced through the day. Similarly, in Indonesia, where the country wakes up early and wraps up early, the fieldwork was more towards late afternoon and early night, and for face-to-face, while online and mobile was spaced through the day, while online continued to be more in the evening, especially for men. We also saw that the target audience reached, the majority of the target audience reached initially were different by methodologies. In India, it was largely women, homemakers, retired personnel, while in Indonesia, it was the older age group. And, but while online and mobile had a fairly well spread out of the TG was pretty well spread in terms of age and gender, those skew towards the working population more. And within the income band, I mean, we were largely focused on the socio-economic band A. We found face-to-face would reach the lower income group, while the mobile and the online methodology reached the mid to higher income group. What we tried and did then was to see if what was the purchase behavior on the mobile phone or on the online websites with regards particular categories. And we combined all these categories into consumer and household products and saw that everybody did buy online or through a mobile app. It's just that the frequency of people who responded on the mobile phones was higher than offline. We also established this from the apps that were installed on the smartphones via meter data to see whether what they were claiming was actually happening. We also did it for another category for food delivery, where again the same hypothesis was maintained. Here, I think online and mobile had a much higher frequency than face-to-face, but they were pretty equal, especially for Indonesia. But in India, definitely, I mean, the people who responded on the phone probably ordered 4 times or more per month, while, you know, the ones who were interviewed face-to-face were ordering a couple of times. Again, we looked at the app install data for food delivery and found that there was a direct correlation there. So essentially, customers are moving towards online and mobile purchases irrespective of the methodology we use to reach them. One other aspect that we try to understand was all the respondents, their mobile behavior in terms of the features they were using and the apps they were using and for how much time. So we averaged it out, and from our meter, we found the data to be actual data. This is combined data for both markets at 70 minutes, while their perceived, so the perceived time was actually 350 minutes. So almost like a 5x amount of misclaim that existed here. We cut this data by age, gender, and methodology, and found that there weren't very much differences by any of those aspects. It continued to be in the 4x, 5x range as far as misclaim was concerned. So we now looked at some of the behavior data that we got from our panel management tool, SmartSight, and actually saw how responses came in through the day, through the two methodologies across the week. And we found that though it is spread for both methodologies, it's concentrated in the morning half for online and evening in the mobile. And when we compare it by market, you can see in online it's focused around 7 a.m. Or 8 a.m. in Indonesia and about 10 in India. And in the mobile, the responses are highest at around 5 in Indonesia and around 7 at India time. So essentially, when people go to work, they take email surveys, and when they return, they take mobile surveys. We also looked at responses by location in terms of age, and we found that the younger age group, 18 to 25 years, take the maximum amount of surveys on their mobile phones. And the older age groups take more surveys while they're at office or at home. But if you see it by device, typically face-to-face surveys are mostly conducted at home, followed by office. And when people do surveys on their desktop or laptop, which is essentially online, they do most surveys at office. But mobile is pretty much spread through the different locations, a slightly higher skew towards traveling. But if you do see, there's a fair amount being taken at home or office or elsewhere in the galaxy. We also looked at seeing how time and location targeting could help in terms of improving responses. So if I just look at the red dots, which are people who actually agreed to participate or just clicked on the link to participate, and without targeting, the upper row kind of indicates what was the response rate. And when we did have time and location targeting, we were able to improve response rates by a significant percentage. And it's definitely higher for online. The reason being because our panel is essentially managing, responding to online surveys. And they're still taking the 20 to 25 minute surveys on their mobile phone. And we believe if the surveys were more adapted to the mobile medium, we could definitely see a significant increase in that 40% there. So just to conclude, what we found was there were differences by different research methodologies, but the differences were more in terms of the target audience reached and the productive field time, which both impact the time, cost, effort that one needs to take to get a representative sample, and that translates to a lot more cost in the case of face-to-face research. We also understood that if we do manage to target customers with time and location, we are able to get a far more richer, accurate response. And we didn't find too much differences in terms of stated behavior versus actual behavior, irrespective of which methodology they were contacted with. And finally, everybody, I mean, all the customers are moving towards making online or mobile purchases, and it's the right time to kind of contact them as where they are. Next, I would just like to hand this over to Ashwini, who would give us a perspective from Unilever side on this topic.
Morning, everyone. So from having listened to online versus mobile versus the conventional pen and paper format, what I'm going to do, as Ruchika mentioned, is to give you a little bit of flavor from a manufacturer standpoint in terms of how our take on the mobile bit is, and particularly some of the things that we think will gain traction moving forward. First, the underlying thinking or the principle that we have in Unilever when it comes to mobile is not really about looking at mobile as something that we would like to retrofit from the offline or the conventional format. The idea that we operate with is that this is pretty much something that we want to leverage. And the way we call it is to mobilize the mobility of the mobile. Now, what do I mean about it? Let me actually give you 3 pointers in terms of how we are using it in a big way, which will hopefully give you a flavor in terms of what we are up to on this. Now, we are all sitting in the D&E world, and it's actually a pretty known fact that when it comes to technology, it's really no longer the domain of the D world. It is pretty much all pervasive, ubiquitous. How are we using this? When it comes to mobile and really enhancing the mobility, we are using this to what we call as reaching the unreachable. So, for example, in markets like Africa, where conventional formats of pen and paper and face-to-face interviews are difficult to conduct, or if they are, we are able to conduct them, they are highly, I would say, cost-intensive. This has really proved to be a boon for us. Second, we all know mobiles have evolved, and in terms of prowess, we probably think that they have the prowess which can actually put the man on moon. Now, we are looking to leverage this in order to what we would call as coming up with engaging formats and looking to, in a way, to actually gamify the techniques when it comes to engaging with consumers, with respondents, and eliciting information. Now, this particularly becomes very critical when we are engaging with demographic segments which find it difficult to articulate themselves. So, for example, if we are conducting work with kids, young kids, and we want to really have a view from them in terms of their response to a stimulus or anything for that matter, this really comes in handy. And third, we've talked about actually in the last session, I guess the last year we talked about it in a big way as well, and I think in a previous session this was touched upon as well. But when it comes to really bridging the gap between what consumers say and what consumers do, we believe that when it comes to mobile and mobile devices particularly, this is really the way forward in terms of not only getting a real understanding of consumers. Because interestingly, what happens is that as human beings, the brain is actually hardwired to forget things. Otherwise, if it were to remember everything, all human beings would probably go insane. So it is hardwired to forget things. In therefore, many cases, consumers are not able to recollect or fully recall what they are supposed to, and this really helps us move forward in this. So therefore, when it comes to mobile, our mantra actually is from adopting to cope to from adopting to cope to adapting to win. Thank you. Questions?
Hi, any questions from the floor? Great, we've covered it all again then, so thanks once again, team. And
Thank you.
off to fight other battles in different galaxies, I suppose.